Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back. My name is Eleanor, and I thought I'd give you an idea of how my week went because it was yet another very fascinating week. So to start with, I had taken out of the library a book that is called The Body in Question by Ciment. It was mentioned by someone somewhere on BookTube. I apologize, I cannot remember. And this is what the book looks like. And I very much like this cover. I've seen another cover which I don't like at all. The beauty of this recommendation is that you should be able to also go into your library and find this book, hopefully. Ciment has just come out with a book that's called Consent. I have not read it yet. But what I quite like is to go to the library, get an older book of an author that I think I might be interested in, and before I really fork out the money for a brand new book. That being said, there is a brilliant booktuber who I just discovered who has a wonderful discussion about Jill Ciment's latest book, Consent, and this booktuber I will link down below. And her name is Fly Girls Read Too. Okay, so I get this book out and I start to read it, and I like it because it's about a jury and it's about trying to decide is someone guilty or not. Well, it wasn't like that at all. It wasn't about that at all. And suffice to say, it's a book about a woman in her 50s deciding what she wants to do with the rest of her life and where she stands in her marriage to a much older man. So she's 52. Her husband is 80 and his health is failing rapidly. And she is part of this 6-person jury in Florida. And they are immediately sequestered. And she meets a 42-year-old man. And things begin to rapidly happen and change for her in many ways. It's a very short book and it's a very easy read. But it's not what it seems. Be aware, I would recommend that you don't even read the blurb of the book. I don't know why they give away so much of the story in the back of this book. I don't know why they do that. But on second thought, it really probably doesn't matter because the book isn't about what you think it will be. That's the hook, though. So if you want to keep the hook intact, which I would have liked to do, don't read anything about this book, just read it. So how does a woman in her mid-50s look at her own body? How does she look at an older man's body, younger man's body? And what does she do when she's sequestered for several weeks in a hotel room? And now you're thinking, this sounds a little bit like All Fours by Miranda July, if you possibly saw my short review of it, or if you're one of my viewers who has read the latest July book. And I will say yes, it is a very interesting option to read before or after All Fours. In many ways, it speaks, there's a conversation that's happening between the body in question and All Fours, which really brings me further into my week, although I'm just looking at my notes, and let me just give you one quote from The Body in Question, page 22. Don't worry, there's absolutely no spoilers here. This is what the judge says to the jury. You're allowed to take notes for your own use, the judge instructs them, but don't get so distracted taking notes that you don't pay attention to other clues. Notes are not a substitute for memory. Transcripts are not a substitute for memory. It's not only what a witness says, it is also whether or not you believe them. And when you take this in the context of reading and writing, I think that informs the next few books I'm going to talk about. And that quote definitely informed my reading further, because I read books and not meaning to, it just happened. I swear it just happened. And I'll explain to you how. I was reading these books by middle-aged women that seemed to be autobiographical, could very well be called autofiction. They are anyway, so let's just embrace the autofiction label. But it would be a huge mistake to decide that the notes, as in the books, as in the writing, is actually saying something utterly truthful and authentic about the people behind the books. And I think that's very important to remember. And that, in a way, was also what I was trying to remember when reviewing, not really reviewing, I really was discussing in one of my last videos, All Fours by Miranda July. I wanted to say that I'm still proud of that video I made, but I would counsel you to check out the very, very short discussion of All Fours, again by my new favorite discovery, Fly Girls Read Too, because she, in a couple of minutes, with a great lightness and appreciation of sense of humor, which I often lack when I get into these territories, presents the book. And once I saw her short review, I thought to myself, why is it that I'm taking these books about middle-aged women so seriously that I feel that they are actually commenting on something that's so close to the bone? I wonder why. I mean, I think I'm around the same age as Fly Girls Reads Too, but I often get stuck believing the notes. And as the judge says, look around you, use your eyes. And also don't take things too seriously. So moving on, I read this book, and then I thought to myself, I want to read a book from my shelves. Now, the story of my shelves is that I inherited a library that was collected over many, many decades by my grandfather. And one of the books that I have had out for many years now, which I've been meaning to read and for some reason kept putting off, is the most amazing book by Colette, who I never knew anything about really. Well, I did in a way, but that's a long story. The book Break of Day by Colette. Now, why did I actually know Colette and I didn't know Colette? Because I grew up with the movie Gigi, which is based on her book, Gigi. I didn't know that. Gigi was also one of my grandfather's favorite movies. So, Break of Day by Colette, written in 1927. She is a woman who is in her mid-50s, although she won't quite admit it, but that's what she is. And she's had quite a past, or I won't go into it. You can Google her. That's all on the internet for you. So let me tell you, she's now in her mid-50s, and she takes a break from the city and goes to live in a small house by the water in Saint-Tropez. But this isn't an autobiography. She creates a story and she creates a character. Don't believe the notes. This is fiction. It reads like autofiction. And remember, this was 1927, which brings me to, very quickly, before I forget, I'm including in the notes a link to an incredible discussion about Colette, which was held about a year ago. And all the women on the platform are amazing. But I know that I probably have some viewers who love Deborah Levy, and she is talking about Colette there as well. And I find what she says fascinating. And I also discover that she's just about to come out with a new book, Deborah Levy, that is, which contains different chapters, each one describing an author who influenced her greatly. And one of them is Colette, which is, sorry, that's my dog shaking. So back to Break of Day. If you read All Fours and you're my age and you were somewhat upset or depressed or confused or interested but in a weird way that made you perhaps feel some discomfort, or should I go so far as to say shame, which is nothing to be ashamed of. Stop everything, go get a copy of Break of Day and enjoy it. It is a fabulous story of this middle-aged woman who is attempting to find her place in a world that is changing all of a sudden. All of a sudden she's moved to reread letters that her mother sent her when her mother was an older woman. She's rethinking whether she wants to ever share a house with anybody ever again. And when she finds that a young, very good-looking man visits her regularly and wants to spend time with her and wants to go swimming with her, and that there's a younger woman who seems to be interested in this younger man, but he is interested in the protagonist, in the older woman, a decision has to be made by the protagonist how to live her life now, whether she wants to, whether she needs to, whether she can continue a certain romantic life, a certain sexual life, and just generally a life that she might have embraced in the past. How does she view herself? And I don't want to say any more because it's interesting what she decides to do and how she views herself. But I do feel like this is an absolutely momentous book to read if you are, I mean, it's good for everyone, but I do feel that if you're a woman, and particularly, I suppose, a heterosexual woman, I should say, possibly. I mean, look, this book is for everyone, but it's more for some people than for others, possibly, in my imagination. Have I ruined the book now? I hope not. The book itself is so enjoyable and so light, and I was so giddy to discover Colette's effervescent writing that I'm immediately looking for other things to read by her. And it's really quite weird because you can buy secondhand books very cheaply online, but there don't seem to be that many new books that have come out that are, republished of hers. And it's a bit odd, but in any case, I also want to mention that this particular book that I'm reading is illustrated by Françoise Gillot, who is the author of Life with Picasso and who is the woman who lived with Picasso for a while. She herself is a wonderful artist. I should have said that first. And I'll put some of the illustrations up because they are superb and they capture the light and the beauty of the lifestyle that Colette describes. So I read The Body in Question by Jill Ciment, and then I read Break of Day by Colette. And I had previously looked into a book by Annie Ernaux called Getting Lost. I had read her Simple Passion, and it's a teeny tiny book. And Simple Passion is like the concentrated version of Getting Lost. It's the same story, but just in concentrated form, a very, very meticulously crafted. Getting Lost is the rambling one. And that's the one that I had. I've had it on my shelf for a few weeks now, and I dip in and out. It's that kind of book. And for some reason, I wonder why, I went back to that after those two books. Now, it will not surprise you, I don't think, that Annie Ernaux was 48 at the time, I think, of writing this book, and definitely the time that she captures in this book. I believe she was 48, and she has an affair with a married Russian diplomat who was 35. And it lasted for 18 months. The obsession, it's completely a narrative of a 48-year-old woman's obsession with a man. You don't really know very much about the man. It doesn't matter. You don't really know why she has this obsession. It doesn't matter. It is a window into those 18 months, and it's rather riveting and shocking to me to realize that this happens so often in literature, that one person, and I'm thinking more of female writers than male, but this particular obsession that with one person that results in getting lost, in losing a huge part of yourself and your life, and it doesn't make any sense at all. And so I think, again, if you have read Annie Ernaux, and you have read either, Simple Passion or Getting Lost, and you're feeling really uncomfortable and weird and sad and depressed, and again, I would recommend that you go back to Colette. Because Colette somehow is able, through all of her different experiences, to rise above it all with this strength and joy and control. I think with Colette, I don't see her ever being in a situation as Annie Ernaux was. And if she was, I don't think she would write about it in that particular way. So all these women are losing their way and finding their way. And it's not really about who they're with. It's really about them. And it's a kind of coming of age. And it makes me realize that Miranda July is really doing nothing new. She is continuing a tradition, a very strong tradition of women writing about this phase of their lives. And then I was tidying up my desk, and I realized that I'd forgotten that I was in the middle of rereading a Clarice Lispector book. And it's this one, The Apprenticeship, or The Book of Pleasures. Two other possible titles that I see on the inside of the cover are The Origin of Spring, and the other one is The Necessary Death in the Middle of the Day. And when you think about what all of these books have in common, okay, so I look up how old was Clarice Lispector when she wrote this book. So she was 48 years old when she wrote this book. Okay, so that already makes sense. Now, I believe that she's not writing about her present experience at the age of 48. She's looking back. This book by Lispector, I read it once and I felt that I just had to get through it. And then now I was halfway through, and all of a sudden I'm looking at it through the lens of, if you remember, through the lens of Jill Ciment's book, Colette's book, Ernaux's book. And I see how now I'm reading it completely differently. Here is a kind of autofiction written by a woman in midlife, but about her younger years, prior to her marriage. And who is the protagonist that she's invented? And what is this relationship she's invented with this man, with this Ulysses? It is, I would say, probably exactly what Colette would counsel against. Colette would strenuously counsel against this type of overthinking. And I know that it's subjective to call it overthinking, but this is a subjective review. This is the ultimate example of a man and a woman, in this case, thinking so deeply about what they mean to themselves, what they mean to each other, what it might mean to have sex, what it might mean to be together their whole lives, what it might mean to be soulmates, that it's almost miraculous that they remain together. And also, it's really quite amusing that every once in a while, the narrator, Lispector mentions that they're meeting at this bar or they're meeting at this restaurant. So all this time, this internal world is going on for them. And every once in a while, I'm like, oh my God, they're still dating? They're still dating? Oh my God. So I would say, highly recommend this book along with the others. It goes extraordinarily well. My first response to this, of course, because I'm Eleanor, is to take it extraordinarily seriously. Oh, this is a book of great literature. Yes, it is, and it is a serious book. But it also has irony in it. And once you get a taste of that, I think you can really enjoy moving along page after page and getting a bit of a giggle out of it as well. If you're going to get this book, yes, try it out from the library first, but I'll say if you're going to purchase it, which I decided I wanted to do, I would say only purchase this one. Now this one is, the New Directions paperback. I'll link to it. Why do I say that? Not because of the translation. The translation is fine. I wouldn't know one translator from the other. Stefan Tobler. This came out in the translation in 2021. Say two reasons why you must get this edition. First of all, the cover. It's so beguiling, so mysterious, so perfect. The artist is Leanne Shapton. Leanne Shapton is one of my all-time favorite illustrators and book cover artists. Unfortunately, I've realized that her website is under construction. I'm sure it'll be amazing when it does come out. But I'll leave a few links because she's absolutely fascinating. If you read contemporary or classical literary / classical fiction, you've seen her work. She's also the editor of the New York Review of Books, the art editor of the New York Review of Books. And I have a story for you, and I didn't bring the book, and I'm just going to get it. I'll be right back. Leanne Shapton is, to me, just absolutely a genius, but I first discovered her through this book, The Important Artifacts and Personal Property, from the collection of Lenore Doolan and Harold Morris. It's gorgeous. It's a story in photographs, and the photographs are of objects, so-called objects, that are going to be auctioned off because this couple has broken up. This young couple, Lenore Doolan, who is a writer, she's a food writer for the New York Times, was dating for a while Harold Morris, who's a photographer, and then eventually broke up. So this is their fiction, it's all fiction. So when they break up, all of their objects are being auctioned off. It's absolutely delightful. But why am I bringing that into this story? It's because she has two actors play the role of this couple, and you will see that the woman she has play Lenore Doolan is indeed Sheila Heti. And I saw, and there's photos, there's many photos of Sheila Heti here because she's playing the part, yeah? So they've been good friends ever since, and they've done books together, etc. But I saw Sheila Heti in these photographs long before I realized she was an author. And so when I first came across a picture of Sheila Heti after I'd read one of her books, I actually did a double take and was like, but wait a minute, that's Lenore Doolan. That's not Sheila Heti, which is a lot of fun. And which brings me back to the reason why I brought this up is because this particular New Directions, yes, paperback has an afterword by Sheila Heti. And this afterword is perfection, and it is worth the book altogether. I will give you just an idea, a quote just from the beginning of Sheila Heti's afterword. The quest of this book is to love and to be loved. But in order to truly love and be loved, one must first find one's way to the most difficult thing, which is a joyful relationship with the mightiness of life. I mean, this is a perfect summary of this book. Sheila Heti continues, and while most love stories do away with this requirement and don't even recognize it, just have the lovers hurtling towards each other, this love story is a question about this requirement, and can it ever be won? And she goes on to ask, who are these bizarre creatures? And she's talking about Laurie and Ulysses, the characters in this particular Lispector novel, who ask of each other what no two people who are suffering from desire have perhaps ever asked of the other one. How true. How true. A work of fiction, a work of delight, a work of fiction that works its way into your soul and makes you wonder if perhaps that is what we're all doing when we look for love. And perhaps we just aren't able to put it into words as Clarice Lispector does. So I believe I've gone through all my notes. I had an amazing week. I tried to summarize it for you here. Let me know if you've read any of these books. I'll try to link as much as I can below. I wish you all the best. I hope you're all having a wonderful weekend if you do watch this when this video comes out. And please, please remember, the only real property is the property of the mind. Bye-bye.